I'm ready. Live. Good morning, afternoon, everybody. It's the Functions Live webcast for what, June 16th, 2018, June 14th, 2018, already Friday in my head. Today, we have a bunch of fun monitoring demos to talk about. We also have some V2 updates to talk about. Also, I'm Alex Karsher.
I'm Fabio Cavalcante.
I'm a PM on Functions.
I'm one of the engineers on the Functions team.
And say it together, we're expert as we can ever be. All right, I'm going to hop right into it. I'm going to share my screen to everybody. Oh, yeah, we finally got it. It only took, what, 3 webcasts to get screen sharing to work on the first try.
So what are we going to start with?
So I am going to start with our monitoring improvements. This is a lot of the stuff that we talked about at Build. We have moved in the Functions portal to an entirely App Insights-powered monitoring experience. So in the Functions portal, you get direct links to App Insights log queries and just a prettier, fancier UI. Also, for all new functions that you create in the portal, you get App Insights by default, which should make the monitoring experience loads better. So I'm just going to start by hopping right into a brand new function that I made. This is called, oh man, it's called something. It's called App Insights Samples. 1 second. So yeah, I have a sample function here with a bunch of different App Insights trigger types, or I guess with a bunch of different normal trigger types and App Insights enabled. So when you're in the familiar Functions portal,
why was there a giant picture of my face?
When you're in the Functions portal, you can go into the monitoring tab just like normal, and you get this newer, fancier UI. This is all powered by App Insights behind the scenes. So we have a bunch of the same information, and if you expand any of these, you get a bunch of different invocation details for your function.
So all of that experience is now built into the Functions portal.
Yeah,
right? So you don't
absolutely.
have to actually leave the Functions portal, go to a different app, go to App Insights in order to see this data.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things in here, we obviously have this like pre-canned information, but I like that you can run any of these queries in the App Insights portal. I have it opened up over here so that it'll load just a touch faster. Actually, here, I'll just use this one to see the exact query. The App Insights portal, if you've ever been like normal Azure App Insights portal, is really, really good for like troubleshooting your function. And I like the custom queries for doing any like analytics of your function. Like there's 100 videos where the App Insights people show you like trace analysis of your function. So yeah, this is the same query we were showing in the portal, but now it's over here and we can tweak it a little bit. So like if I want more results, I can change my take from 20 to 100. And we pull out a couple of the most interesting metrics, but if you get rid of this project statement, there's a bunch more stuff in here in these logs for you to mess around with.
So a lot more data than what we used to have in the standard experience.
So yeah, you get like a performance bucket, you get the success information, you get a bunch of different IDs to correlate these with like the platform logs and stuff. So yeah, here, let me pop in a slightly more interesting example. So if you can write sort of query you want in here. So I wrote a query before now to get my performance as buckets. So if I run this, I get a nice little histogram of my duration for all of my different functions, which I think is super cool. I literally go in here and for all of these HTTP triggered functions, I split up the count by the duration of the function. So you can set this precision to anything you want. So I have it in like 20 millisecond performance buckets. Or no, yeah, I have it in 20 millisecond performance buckets. But you can write whatever you want in here. Like I see in my performance graph that I have a bunch of very, very performant functions, and then it kind of runs off the side of the screen. So everything over like 7 seconds is just this one big bar. So I can actually go into this query and I can filter by only executions where the duration is more than 7 seconds, and then I can kind of zoom in on that last half of the performance graph so I can see like every other execution. Yeah, the query language is this big, huge document that like I think is tons of fun to read, but this like summarized statement is probably one of the most powerful things in here. One of the other bits of information that is super useful as you're monitoring your function is this custom metrics field. I don't know if you know this or many people know it, but when you emit logs to app insights, you pay per like byte that you write to app insights. So once your function starts writing a bunch of logs, we start sampling the logs. So you get like 4 logs a second, or like every 1,000th log gets logged to app insights. And so all of the other data that doesn't get logged, we like sum together and put in the custom metrics table. So I'm going to query this to get just 10 records.
By the way, we do have some documentation from a functions perspective on how you can tweak that behavior and figure out insights and logging, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in your host JSON to like disable that altogether or like tweak the parameters. Right. So if you want it to like...
So you do have some control over sampling behavior and all of that.
Yeah, sampling and aggregating behavior. So yeah, if you want to aggregate like more or less metrics, so you can go in here and see like the success rate, the average duration, the like actual count of executions. So like I can see here 4 executions got binned together into 1 metric. So this is super useful if you have like a high scale function that's starting to break up, like you're getting an error that you can't quite pin down. It's really useful to go in here and see like, okay, when did these errors happen? And then you can go back to the other table and start to query around that time. And also if you're looking for logs and can't find them, this is a super great place to start to see like, oh, okay, so something did happen and I just need to tweak my settings to get that information. Cool. So I am going to head back over to my slideshow. That was some of our improvements. Again, like the App Insights portal, there's so much in there. People give an hour and a half presentations on just the App Insights portal.
And that's just the intro.
Yeah. So the next monitoring improvement that we made recently to functions is something called the Support Center. It's centered around different like error cases that functions get into. Specifically, it'll surface some of your code errors. It'll surface errors with functions not coming online altogether, and it'll surface like platform limitations. And this is something that we're adding to probably about every week. We're like looking at how people use the Support Center and trying to get better different emitters in here.
Looking at new error conditions and
and I think that it's super cool in here that it's all logs that the platform collects for you, so you don't pay to get your logs into Support Center, whereas App Insights, you do pay to get your logs into App Insights. So yeah, I'm going to hop right over to the functions portal again. I need sad serverless. This is a function I made that's just busted up. Be like alliteration here on the functions team. So this function has a bunch of different error conditions kind of replicated in here. And if I go into the platform features, under resource management, there's this new diagnose and solve problems link. Getting thumbs up from outside of the conference room. So this was debuted for web apps a while ago, and we've now added a bunch of function-specific things. So you can see we've ported over the one useful web app emitter, this TCP connections limit. So the first thing that I think that you should do when you get in here is this functions health checkup. So this is going to run a bunch of different detectors and give me like a top-level overview of what might be wrong with my function. So you'll get like stoplight colors in here for what is going down. So this is kind of replicating the flow that a lot of us would go through when you like open a support ticket. Right. And so now you kind of get a little bit of that, $100,000 mission center room just inside of the portal for anybody to go mess around with. So I see that I had 2 critical errors, 1 successful check, and I get a little bit more info in that. So I see that I have both a function detected in error and out-of-memory exceptions that have occurred. And I have conveniently named my function in error. So it's having an error indexing the function named function in error. And I also see that there are out-of-memory exceptions occurred. And it gives me a little bit of insight into what exactly the memory limit is and what you can do to mitigate it. I have a nice little graph of the out-of-memory errors over time. Hopefully, you never have to see this graph. But if you're doing a lot of high-scale compute and you haven't broken your work into small jobs, you're going to start to hit that 1.5 gig memory limit. I see I got a little green checkbox that I'm running in the consumption plan. If you're not running in the consumption plan, it's way easier to hit resource limits, obviously, because you've limited your resources. I also just get general indications over time and average CPU memory in here. If you don't have anything wrong, that's kind of the most interesting graph to just look at and see like, oh, cool, so it was like spinning around. It wasn't just off for the entire time that we were sampling. So I'm going to go dive a little bit deeper into the out-of-memory errors to kind of try to see what's going on. I wrote a function that I expected to get out-of-memory errors, but if this is not something you're expecting, it can be super helpful. So I get that same graph, and then now I get an actual printout of all of the different errors that are emitted, or specifically all the out-of-memory errors.
And you get the detailed stack trace.
Yeah, I get like the detailed stack trace. Yeah, if you hover over it, it comes in with the line breaks. But I imagine everybody's just going to paste this into their text editor of choice and actually view it. So yeah, this is one of the troubleshooting flows that we worked on. You can also just check on this this box called scaling issues, and that'll just show you the CPU memory breakdown over time. And this is super useful if your function isn't running well and you can't really figure out what else is wrong. You can look at the count of executions, the worker allocation, and the CPU memory usage, and try to see if like, hey, I have a lot of executions, but only one worker allocated. And it might be, it could be a sign that you need to go and tweak your like trigger types. Or you have like one worker with really high CPU usage and more workers keep coming online and not getting work allocated to them, and that could indicate that you have like a big single-threaded workload and like there's nothing that anyone can do to make that multi-threaded. So yeah, I want to kind of tweak around in here. This out of error is super cool for the app insights side of troubleshooting. Like if you don't have app insights enabled, or you if you don't have app insights enabled, then this is an awesome place to troubleshoot that error. But inside of this out of memory function, if we go over to the monitor tab, I poked around a little bit earlier, and this is like one of the most clear, awesome troubleshooting flows inside of App Insights. If you actually open up the App Insights instance for this function, and then you go over to the failures blade, you get a super nice like timeline of what was going wrong. And if I open up this exception type, I see what my two different exceptions are. And so I have this out of memory exception. I got 124 in the last 24 hours. So I can open up this and get more info on what was going wrong at that point. I can actually open up this transaction detail and I can see like the logs for that time. So like it's specifically showing me just this exception, but I think I can sample, view all telemetry, and then it'll be like exactly what was going down during that time. So yeah, let me hop on.
In the past, when we used to get these incidents and look at a function map and find some of the details that were not easily surfaced to customers, we would provide that information and just get that feedback that, oh, if only I had access to that data.
Yeah.
So the hope is that now people have access to that information, people can actually troubleshoot what's wrong with the application and self-help.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, we're also like, we're surfacing more information and we're making it easier to get to. Yeah. Do you want to hop right into some V2 updates?
And again, the Support Center part is all free.
Yeah.
And App Insights has a free grant as well.
Yeah, they have a free grant.
Yeah. So they start out free. Okay.
Cool. So
all
yeah,
right.
Let's get right into some V2 updates. Oh yeah, do you want to see us? That's crazy.
I don't know if anyone wants
Here,
to.
let me change over to it's one of these. The third window is the one that you always want to select. There we go.
All right.
Cool.
So I think one of the things that we wanted to do is provide a quick update on the state of V2. There's a lot of work happening there. For those of you following the repo, there's a lot of activity happening both in the functions host as well as the web jobs SDK repo, wrapping up some of the remaining items that we have to finish up for V2. We just had a release that finished up this last week. So we have a release that has introduced a lot of the enhancements we we have talked about in the past, in previous webcasts, and we have published information about as well. One of those issues, one of the features that we've introduced with the latest release was some of the enhancements around assembly loading and assembly binding. So we have a long-standing issue that we have worked on from V1 that has been addressed in V1, that has been addressed in V2. The initial implementation of this feature is actually on the latest release now. So we would ask for those of you who have run into issues with assembly binding, had the need for assembly redirect, a lot of those are resolved and mitigated in the latest version that we just released. So if you could give that a try, we would really be really happy to get some feedback, understand how that's working for you, if it is, if it isn't. But a lot of work has been done to enhance the behavior and address a lot of the issues that people ran into for managed .NET assembly bindings.
Yeah, and I think we have one more breaking change coming down the pipeline for that feature, or they should like go and deploy everything, get it set up just how you like it.
Not for that feature specifically, although there are some enhancements that are still pending. This doesn't address all of the assembly binding issues. It addresses a huge number of them, but not all of them. We still have some work that's actively happening in the WebJobs SDK to decouple some of the extensions that we had, particularly the storage extensions, so we can provide better isolation between those. So for those of you who had problems with trying to use a different version of the storage SDK, for example, that's not currently addressed with the last release, but it's something that's going to be landing in a future update. But some of the breaking changes that we are expecting to see land are more related to extensions and some of the dependency injection work that's happening right now in the WebJobs SDK and making its way into the Azure Functions runtime.
Okay.
I think another nice update that came with the last release was the fact that we're running on .NET Core 2.1 as of last release. That also addressed a lot of issues with people trying to use the latest bits and had some problems with unification, which is kind of related to the assembly binding and resolution work that was done. But we're running on .NET Core 2.1 now. A big feature that I'm definitely
very excited about.
Yeah, I'm sure you're excited about is the fact that proxies is now in 2.0 as well.
Yeah.
So if you used proxies in V1, we've got a lot of feedback from customers saying, hey, this is still missing in V2. Well, it's in now, so you can actually use proxies. And just to reiterate the fact that the 2.0 runtime is cross-plat, so that means that you can actually run proxies on OSs other than Windows as well.
We won't speak of their name, but they're out there.
But you can now use proxies with a local development, local tuning as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's one more fix still coming down the pipeline to make proxies even better on macOS. But you can at least run it now locally, and all the templates should paste in nicely.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think as is kind of always to be expected, there's perf and stability updates coming down the pipeline with V2.
Yeah,
always faster, better.
Yeah,
stronger.
We have perf and stability enhancements done with every single release.
Yeah.
We have some significant ones landing with the next release that's coming in. We do expect some significant performance improvements. We're doing a lot of work to match a lot of the behavior that we had in V1 with the standby and standby workers and a lot of the things that we've done to enhance performance in V1. Now we're applying that to V2 as well. Client tools, we're updating the CLI. One of the things, because of the dependency on .NET Core 2.1, the way you actually have to explicitly acquire the CLI at the moment, we haven't pushed an update to the Visual Studio tools so that you can get the latest version of the CLI, because that would introduce the 2.1 requirement until we fix some things to be able to circumvent that. But if you are eager to try out all of these changes that we just mentioned. You can actually install the CLI from npm, and that's going to have the latest version that has all of the new features that we just introduced.
Sounds awesome. You want to hop into some questions?
Let's do that.
All right.
The most popular question right now from the chat, also from Twitter, is about cold start. So why don't we start with that?
Yeah, I think we touched on that very briefly with the instability enhancements that we are planning. So some of the performance and the enhancements that we are introducing with the next release will actually are specifically to address cold start in V2. Yeah, so if you're looking for cold start performance improvements, the next release is going to be the big one you need to watch for. Significant enhancement, significant work happening in that space for the next release now.
Yeah, we're still getting closer to lighting up run from zip in more scenarios, more places, but that's the place for cold start improvements, right? Coming up.
That and a lot of the work that's being done. Without getting too deep into the details, but the hosting model is changing a little bit, the way we actually host the runtime in V2. So that will yield some better cold start performance. And we are applying some of the infrastructure features, the infrastructure support that we have for V1 to V2 as well. So you gain some parity now as far as what the features, the performance features are between the two runtimes. So you can expect similar behavior, significantly faster cold start performance when running against V2.
That sounds perfect. So right into the questions from Twitter. Chris Gardner asked us a question, as well as a few other people, about F# templates in Visual Studio. I hear they're coming down the pipeline pending some Visual Studio work.
Yeah, there's some Visual Studio work happening right now to support that. The F# team is working closely with us on this feature, on these set of templates and support for F#, better support for F# in Visual Studio. So I don't have an ETA right now. I don't know when that would happen, but that's something that's being actively worked on.
Let's see here. There's we talked about, a bunch of people asked explicitly about V2, which is good. Remote did. Billy York asked one of my favorite questions: when is #PowerShell not going to be experimental smiley face? We love PowerShell. It's coming. It's definitely something that we're spinning a lot of cycles on. But I don't know. Keep a lookout.
Yeah, and I think I'll shared some information about what the plans are. The reply to Billy on Twitter. But yeah, it's something we're definitely tracking. And not an item we have an ETA for. Probably not something we're tracking for GA, so it wouldn't be a GA blocker. But definitely something that's a very high priority for us to get working, and something that we can ship out of band shortly after GA.
This actually, this is an awesome question. If we can, if you have any updates to give.
So a question from Josh Carlisle. He's got a couple of custom binding projects under development at the moment. Is the BYOD story changing at all for 2.0 GA, for upcoming previews? He asks about breaking changes, enhancements, or otherwise. I think I hinted a little bit at breaking changes for extensions. We do have a set of breaking changes planned for that will be particularly impactful to extension authors coming down the pipe in 2.0. The hope is that although that there will be some work needed to deal with those breaking changes, those breaking changes will significantly improve the experience. When extension authors are working with the API, we are making a lot of DI enhancements and making a lot of enhancements to the extensibility APIs. So there are some changes coming prior to GA. We are in the process of working through some of the details on what that bringer binding story will look like for 2.0. Matthew Henderson has been doing a lot of work in that space right now. So if you want to follow him on Twitter, he'll be sharing some of that information once that becomes available.
Yep.
But again, keep an eye out for announcements for 2.0 announcements. And if you want to keep an eye on the WebJobs SDK repo, you'll see when those breaking changes are starting to land. And you'll see the work that's being done in our own extensions to deal with them. So you can use Jobs SDK repo. You'll see when those breaking changes are starting to land. And you'll see the work that's being done in our own extensions to deal with them. So you can use it as a kind of a guide to understand what needs to be done to deal with them.
Yeah, there was a really good question in here about EasyAuth in V2. I imagine EasyAuth is exactly the same in V2. Is it, Matt?
There's no such feature as EasyAuth. App Service Authentication Authorization will be probably
yes.
But
yeah, so the feature itself is going to be essentially the same. So it's the same feature that applies to V1, to Web Service, and to V2. The key difference when it comes to V2 is that there are some enhancements to make working with V2 a little easier. Okay. So you have better access to things like the claims and the principal and some of the details that you may need to look at in order to understand how the user was authenticated and just pull some information before you can actually execute your function.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy Whitley, for that question. I think we have time for probably one more question in here. Anything jump out to you that we can speak to out of our good old list of questions from the sky? Also, thank you guys so much for sending in all these questions. It's super awesome.
We do appreciate that. Yeah. You pick one more question.
All right. Let's talk to Mikhail, who's one of our good buddies, asking what the status of Python in V2 is. It's still in private preview, at least. We're working on it. Is it out of private preview?
I don't believe it is. Not
so yeah, it's very, very close. Stay tuned for more updates in that, but we are working really hard to get Python in an awesome state over here. Spending a lot of cycles on it. And yeah, just in general, we're very, very excited to get V2 in a better state.
Yep, definitely a lot of stability work happening right now, improving reliability and performance of the product. And again, we're looking for feedback, particularly with the last release. If you've had assembly binding, loading issues, we'd love to hear from you. If you're now successful with V2 with scenarios where you've had issues in the past with V2 or V1, we would love to hear that. If you continue to see problems when trying to run your functions, we definitely want to hear that as well. So let us know.
All right. Well, yeah, and also thank you guys so much. We saw a ton of you out at Build, out in the actual field. We got to see you in person. That was super awesome. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm Alex Karsher at Alex Karsher on Twitter.
At CodeSapien on Twitter. Fabio.
And also at Matt C. Henderson is in the room. Tell